Well, a very warm welcome back to TalkNorwichCity. It's Jack Reeve alongside the Pinkun's Connor Southwell. Checking in for our little, these are turning into sort of appraisals, aren't they, Connor? Asking you how you are and seeing how Norwich are getting on. You're smiling. Obviously, things are well.
Yeah, all good, thank you, mate. Pleased now we're sort of getting to the back end of an international break and getting back into it again because probably like you, really, I find myself with a little bit itchy feet when it gets to this stage, and it's like you're desperately waiting for a game and something to get your teeth into. So yeah, ready for Stoke this weekend.
And people often say, "Oh, I bet you're glad that there's been a break, a break from football." But it's probably harder for you, isn't it? You've still got newspaper columns to fill and back pages to write. It can't be that easy with these international breaks.
No, it isn't. I say actually in general terms, not always, but in general terms, the first week is okay, and you can sort of get by because obviously you've still got all of the reflections from the last weekend's game, and you begin to maybe take things out with a view to actually needing them within this break. The second week, and actually this is sort of the hardest stage, the sort of Monday to press conference cycle is the hardest. That's when you're trying to find stuff maybe to write, or different ways to write things, or finding things to write about. But I have to say that this time around and for this break, the team have done a great job. I think we've managed to stagger things out and get enough content out there that hopefully has keeps people entertained over the break. And they're not, as you probably tell, they're not my favorite things in the world. And we've played 9 games. It doesn't feel like we've had any sort of momentum to the season yet. So this one's probably felt the most frustrating in terms of from a football perspective. But equally, I can understand for sort of some nations outside of England and Europe, it's a really important thing that they play these games. So yeah, it is what it is.
I think that consistency and that kind of flow is really interesting. I was on a podcast the other day, and I was kind of had to keep checking myself because it feels as if this season's been going on forever. But actually, as you say, we're only 9 games in. We've spoken a couple of times already this season, Connor, and it feels like each time we catch up, thankfully, things have kind of progressed at Norwich City, and probably has made it easier for you content-wise because the feeling around the place is really good at the moment. The last time we spoke was on the 5th of September here on TNC, and you said that Norwich City is sensing an opportunity. Now, Norwich have played 5 games since then. They've won 3, drawn 1, lost 1. The loss was against Swansea. 4-1 win against Watford followed that. 3-2 win against Derby. A 1-1 draw against Leeds, and then most recently a convincing 4-0 win against Hull. And it feels as if, Connor, I mean, we often go into championship seasons, particularly over the last decade, and Norwich City are the first kind of name on people's lips going into it, just expecting them to get promoted automatically. And that was different this season. We kind of, fallen into the abyss slightly of that mid-table mediocrity when it came to pundits kind of previewing the season, and probably rightly so. I was, much like many others, expecting us to finish somewhere in the mid-table, and that may still happen, but it feels as if we're back on the radar of those pundits, and many now tipping us for top 6. It's been a remarkable month for kind of Johannes and his squad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you'd have gauged the temperature in terms of maybe even after that Swansea game, Norwich wouldn't have been, as you mentioned, on probably anyone's radar. But I think performances in recent weeks, and actually what is good, I guess, in a sense, in terms of these international breaks, is you can break things up into really sort of digestible chunks of games. Over the last chunk of games, I think, definitely after Hull, I was walking away thinking, wow, okay, this might be a team in a season that I've wildly underestimated and could actually be something really, really special. And of course, you have to have a lot of caution with that, because we all know how the championship works, and Norwich were in a higher place and had more points this time last season under David Wagner, and obviously we all know what happened there between sort of that block and November, where they sunk to 17th. So it's a funny league in that regard. But yeah, like you say, there's been, I think, the feeling over the last few weeks post transfer window where they've been able to settle down. They've got a group of players that really want to be at the club and are invested in what Johannes Hoff Thorup and his coaching team are trying to do. And I think we're beginning to see the fruits of that labour. So, it does feel positive. I think probably if we're going to speak about blocks of games, I think the next block of games is probably what I see as a real challenge. I think it's a real litmus test of where Norwich City are, where they've got, I think it's 4 away games from 6, some really difficult fixtures, a few injuries now beginning to pop up. this is where I think we'll get a proper look at what Norwich City are this season and where they could be. But in terms of that start of the season, it's gone from probably looking a little bit underwhelming to actually a feeling of, wow, okay, there could be something quietly, maybe not so quietly now, building, as you said, because there's been some national interest. So it's been really positive, and I think it's a testament to the work of everybody, actually. And actually that feeling that I think fans have had over the last few weeks of, okay, this is interesting. This could be building. I think that has been a feeling that has been going on at Colney as well within the squad. And the thing is, when you spoke earlier about what this season could be, there's a lot of talk around buy-in, and actually results and performances like that, purely from a player perspective, are so important, like the whole game, like the Watford game, like the Derby game, because actually they example that if they do play the way that Johannes Hoff Thorup wants them to play, it's not just aesthetic. They're not just doing it to look pretty and to win plaudits. They're doing it because it's effective and because it wins points. And that's what it's done over the last block of games. So yeah, they're in a really good place at the moment, but I think the next block is really big. I'm almost like that, that video of Ralph Hasenhüttl when he was at Southampton, when he runs out celebrating, and it's just, let's just stay grounded a little bit for the next few weeks and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it feels the most remarkable thing. I think the last time we spoke, Connor, the only league win was against Coventry, and even that was like, it felt less of a performance and more of just grinding out a result. And we said actually up until that stage, the performances had been really good, but we now need to start to see some results. And that last batch of games, we've seen both. We've seen performances and results. And as you say, that the buy-in's a really interesting one. Having sat in the Barclay for, through Dean Smith and Wagner and now most recently Johannes Hoff Thorup, there feels a really good feeling around the place, and it's difficult to pinpoint exactly why that is. Of course, the football plays into it, but it feels it's bigger than that. Are you getting that same sense as well?
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, I've had that sense for a little while. I think if you look even at those early weeks, for example, Blackburn, where Norwich led that game and conceded a late equaliser to draw, and actually you think about the support, and it probably the most natural response from everybody is you walk away feeling a little bit deflated. But actually at the final whistle, it was almost like Norwich had won in terms of the support that the fans were giving the players as they made their way around the pitch. And I think actually, definitely privately, but I think he said this publicly as well, I think Johannes Hoff Thorup has been incredibly grateful and almost not embarrassed, that's the wrong word, but almost slightly taken aback by the support that he's had, because as you said, those first few weeks, Oxford in particular, I mean, we were both there. That was, wow, that was quite something. And for this team to be at game 9, even and we talk about not getting carried away, I think this is a snapshot as to where Norwich City are at this moment in time. You take that first game against Oxford to where they finished against Hull, just unrecognisable. And I think, look, football fans aren't stupid. I don't think. People can fill that in how they like, but I think they generally tend to know when they are seeing something that is good and when they're seeing something that maybe isn't. And I think the difference between what Johannes Hoff Thorup is building compared to maybe his two predecessors, most recently, is the fact that when this Norwich team makes a mistake, both individually or collectively, it is with the view that it's going to be used as a learning tool to sort of take them higher. It's a lot of young players. That is almost not as woven into their fabric as when you're watching kind of a group of experienced players make mistakes, where you just kind of have to accept that that's where they are and what they are. No, it's now being viewed as actually, they are going to make mistakes, and they have made a mistake, but equally, we all know that that's a mistake that isn't factored into their ability. There's a higher ceiling to what we're seeing, both as a collective and individual. And I think for me, it speaks more to the substance of what they're doing. There's a real belief that young players, attractive football, there's a lot of fans who really buy into that, as opposed to what it was last season, which was they weren't particularly great to watch, but they won games, and that's fine if you're winning games. But equally, we saw the flip side of that in the first half of the season where you're not, and it's just really lacking in sort of the why are you doing this? What is the end goal? And if the end goal is simply winning, then I think that becomes very difficult for supporters to stomach. I think you almost need, particularly when you're a club like Norwich, who don't, let's be honest, none of us became Norwich fans to win trophies and titles and Premier Leagues. You want more from your experience as a fan. So it's about that connection. I think that's almost what they've rebuilt that connection and that story. I think that Norwich fans are really enjoying connecting with. But yeah, equally, I think the Norwich fans deserve a huge amount of credit for the way that they've responded, because a lot of fan bases after Oxford, not winning after up to 4 games, I think it was the 4th game of the season, they beat Coventry. A lot of fan bases could have and maybe would have lost their heads in that situation. They didn't. So yeah, I think there's a lot of gratitude actually, and it's nice to be in this position after maybe a couple of years where it's felt like the two parties have been at conflict, where it now feels like there's real appreciation for sort of the fans' behaviour over this start of the season, because they've really been on board with what Norwich have tried to do.
We mentioned the collective kind of improvement there, but obviously it takes individuals to, also improve it in turn to improve that collective element. You look at the likes of Borja Science, now the joint top scorer in the division, Kellen Fisher, that's been brought in, I know had been given opportunities under previous head coaches, but never really kind of stamped his authority on this group. And then players like Shane Duffy, who had kind of been written off by many fans. And again, that wasn't an unjustified opinion. He had been poor in previous regimes. So there's a clear sign here, Connor, that Johannes Hoff Thorup can coach any type of player and seemingly get the best out of them. And when you look at the top managers that have operated in this country, there is a similarity there in getting the best out of the tools you have. And he's done that with new players, the likes of Oscar Schwartau and Ante Cianat, to start to kind of hit the ground running a little bit more, and also players that he'd inherited. And that's really, really impressive.
Yeah, it is, and I think it often gets lost actually for all of kind of the discourse around young players. And yes, he nurtured a lot of them at Nordsjælland, and it's part of why you just don't get to be head coach of Nordsjælland if you're not very good at developing players. But equally, I think his captain, his centre back, was 35 years old, so there has been proof that he is able to mix and match. And I think what he's done really smartly actually is retain quite a bit of the core of that Norwich squad. For all of those players you referenced there, actually, you look at the spine of it. It's Gunn, it's Duffy, it's McLean, it's Sargent. These are players who, Sargent's at the younger end of the spectrum in terms of that, but experienced players who can retain a consistency. And then maybe you've got the fluctuating guys around that, the younger ones you mentioned, and the hope is that within that system you can sort of allow those players to flourish a little more. I mean, Shane Duffy's a really good example, because yes, I think individually he's improved, but actually you can see how the structure's helping him, because he's got so many more passing options now compared to what he had last season, when it was just get the ball off probably Kenny McLean, who dropped in at centre-back, and then ping along diagonal out wide, which is what it was. Now it's about, well, he can take the ball off the other centre-back. He's got Kellen Fisher, who's gone inside. Kenny McLean's there as well. And it also, because Fisher drags the winger inside, it creates the option to go straight into Cianats in that occasion. And so essentially, every time he's got the ball, he's got at least 3 passing options. Plus, obviously, maybe Cordoba as well as a bit more of a lateral pass and Gunn. So we're talking about 5 passing options now when he's on the ball. That's radically different to what it was. So it's probably simplified the game for him a little bit, I think. And that's probably true of all of the players. And, there's so much about... So last season, I felt was more about moments. It was about individuals for Norwich and players who could produce bits of magic. And that you're always reliant to that to an extent when it comes to football, I think. But what we're seeing now is probably more structural. Norwich are creating similar types of opportunities. They're creating very good opportunities, and that's because of the structure that they're playing and the system that they're playing. And I think what that enables it to do is it means that players like Borja Science, like Josh Sargent, have, yes, a lot more responsibility, and they have to be a lot more tactically aware and tactically intelligent. But it gives them, I think, a real structure to get the ball in areas that they want to get them. You look at someone like Borja Science, I mean, his goal return so far is largely because he's getting the ball in areas that he wants to get it in, rather than perhaps what it was last season. So all of it sort of speaks to a team that now looks incredibly well coached, is versatile as well. I think for all of the talk of possession-based football, we're not seeing sort of extreme possession. They've been quite nuanced. There has been times where they've used Ante Cianats as an outball, for example, to play over a press. We've seen different types of build-up structures where they've used Jack Stacey bombing on and inverted a left fullback. Sorry, we've seen them invert both fullbacks. There's lots of different sort of multifaceted solutions to how this team is playing at the moment, basically catering for each opposition. I think that shows a real sort of coaching intelligence that maybe Norwich City haven't had for a few years. And that's not to be disrespectful to perhaps the guys that came before it, but I think it's just a major credit of where Thorup's at. And this is a guy who, you know, was coaching in the Europa League and you know, 6-1 against Fenerbahce, I think it was 7-1 against Ludogorets. I mean, maybe this shouldn't be a surprise to people how quickly he's done it. And I think every time I've spoken to him, there's been probably a real frustration that it hasn't happened sooner. And you know, that sort of real want for more improvement is encouraging as well. So yeah, you're right. I think we are seeing individual improvement, but I do believe that is largely because of the way that Norwich are playing and the way that they're coached at this moment in time, and that ultimately is down to their head coach and their coaching team.
It feels as if as well, Connor, you know, away from Johannes Hoff Thorup, we've got a man in Ben Napper who is operating in a very different fashion to our former sporting director in Stuart Webber, who of course had a very successful first few years as well. We can't, you know, forget about that. But Napper seems to be a different operator. He goes about business very quietly and just slowly gets things done. And away from the signings that, you know, a Cordoba or a Doyle, who everyone now knows about and are mightily impressive, I've been really impressed by the kind of the Slamanis of the world and the Macondeses of the world, who aren't necessarily going to be starting each week, but have a role to play in that dressing room. My mind kind of goes to Jordan Rhodes previously, who maybe wasn't playing every week, but was effective when he did and had a bigger role to play in that dressing room. And it feels as if they're filling parts of this squad that we've maybe been lacking for the last couple of seasons. And that maybe isn't going to be the headlines that are kind of written over the next few weeks and months, but that feels really positive. It feels like there's a really solid foundation being built now.
Yeah, cultural enablers, I think they were called in a previous.
That's a nice way to put it. Yeah,
but you're right. I think it feels now a much better balanced squad in terms of age profile, in terms of the way that it's been built. I think there's, so far, could be wrong, but there's no players really that, you know, is sort of played a few games and you're looking at going, oh, what's he about? What's the logic there? They've all been fairly joined up. I think that helps actually when you've got a clear game model that you're recruiting for. I think, again, Wagner did have a very clear game model. You can agree or disagree with it, but he did have a very clear one. But it was very difficult to recruit for, and it meant that Norwich basically went into this summer with no sort of number 10s, about 7 wingers. It was a really lopsided kind of squad, and they've balanced that out a little bit. And I think actually what's probably been really understated is the fact that they went into this window with basically no left-sided defensive options. They lost Gibson, they lost Johannes, they lost McCallum, and you look at the options that they've replaced all of those with. Callum Doyle, obviously, perhaps being the standout. Jose Cordoba as well, and Ben Crizene even as an option. I think it's really smart, some of the business that they've done. Left-sided players, defenders in particular, are really hard to recruit. They're expensive often, so to find one in the way that they found one is been brilliant. And yeah, it does feel like a team that has got a lot more balance, and certainly now Marcondes is in the building, feels like it's got a bit of depth to it as well, which I don't think it's felt like that for a little while, with obviously some of the young players that we've seen getting chances as well in Gabe Forsyth and Elliot Miles, who's been on the bench a couple of times. So yeah, I think it all feeds into that narrative point that I was saying. These are players who I think you can go on a bit of a journey with as a fan. You can relate to. They feel like they've got a bit more personalities, maybe the wrong word, but it feels like they've got a bit more fuel in the tank. Yeah, or substance. Yeah, definitely. And it feels like you can connect to them a little bit more. And because there's an overarching narrative now, there's an understanding of the why Norwich are doing something, why they are assigning players who are 23 or under in a transfer window, why they're playing the certain way that they are. When that's all being explained and when it's all quite obvious in terms of the results that they're producing, I think it's much easier as a supporter to recognise that. So the group was too old last year. I think that's obvious. It's been said numerous times. This one feels like it's got a much better balance to it, and I think you're right. That's a credit to Ben Napper and the recruitment guys, who have very much adopted a philosophy of a little less conversation, a bit more action, please, which is what we've got, thankfully.
It's been really lovely, Connor, kind of segmenting this season with you so far. And like initially it was right, let's be patient and let's transition and let's try and see a clear playing style. And we thought that maybe, might take an entire season, as it often does with managers, but that's happened quicker than we thought. And then it was okay, there's probably an opportunity here. And we talked about maybe the not lack of quality in this division, but it feels like a more even playing field. And we've seen that with draws against Sheffield United and Leeds United, who are probably the two favourites to go up this season. They face each other on Friday. Where are we at now with expectations? Because surely, having had that taste of the convincing wins against Watford and against Hull, and a really good performance against Leeds United, there must be a mood around the place that's going, okay, this is a really unique season, and let's make it count while we can.
Yeah, there definitely is, but I think also a recognition of the context that you spoke about, the fact that they've had so much change and are still evolving. I think if you asked Johannes Hoff Thorup at this moment in time, is the team playing in the way that you would want? He'd say no, probably not remotely close to it in terms of the levels that he still wants to find. So
but that's exciting, right? Like,
yeah, of course.
The kind of feeling I'm getting from that is, wow, there's more gears to shift through here.
I remember him sitting, I can't remember which of the home games it was. It would have been after one of the double headers, I think, against Blackburn and Sheffield United, one of those games, and saying, look, you'll be able to look at us in October and we'll be so much further along than what we are. And he said similar recently, you'll look at this team in December and we'll be significantly further on than we are at this moment in time. And I think you're right, that is exciting. But I think in terms of expectation, you still have to recognise that it's a new style of play. It's a young group that they're going to fluctuate. I think in terms of performances, as I said earlier on, there's now sort of injury concerns and injuries beginning to filter into the group, and some of that stuff can be unsettling, and it can sort of disrupt momentum a little bit. So I think this is a really big block for Norwich. 5-6 games, the majority of them away. Some really tough places they've got to go as well. This is going to be a proper test of where they're at and how successful they can be this season for me, because if they can get through these unscathed, and we're talking, in the next international break about a Norwich team that is still in and around the playoff positions or potentially even higher, that has taken a good amount of points, but crucially is performing in the right way, then I think there is real cause to get excited off the back of that. So I think my sort of feeling at the moment, and it's a saying that I like quite a lot, which is feet on the ground, head in the clouds. And I think that's where Norwich City fans should be at this moment in time, because I think as soon as we begin to build up expectation or give anything expectation, then you're kind of setting yourself up for a bit of disappointment. So yeah, enjoy the ride, enjoy where they are, and enjoy the journey with this team as well, because it's not all going to be linear. It's going to be up and down, and we'll have to see where we are the next time we're recording one of these videos, and hopefully we're talking about it in even more positive terms.
Absolutely. And if you're still smiling after the end of trips to Stoke and Preston, I'll be very impressed. What, are you setting up sort of a Pinkun Northern HQ for a few days, or are you coming backwards and forwards?
No, we're going to come back and go again. Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? It is tough as to what to do, but that's the way we're going to play it. So we're gonna feel every mile of those trips. That's the hardcore, isn't it? And that's where you learn a lot about this team as well. So yeah, I can't wait actually off the back of this international break, which feels like a bit of a bizarre thing. So I'll be saying this in a week, but I'm looking forward to the run of games, I think.
And there's just quickly on the Stoke game that's coming up. There's a little bit of narrative there now, isn't there, with Pelak having gone there, and I guess that is. I think a few maybe saw that. I certainly saw that and went, wow, his kind of first job as an actual head coach is a decent sized championship club. But then I kind of settled on it. I went, okay, this is more opportunity for Johannes to bring his own people in. That was a strange couple of days of news for kind of movings and shakings in the championship.
Yeah, it was, and I think actually that surprise is probably one that was the case internally at Norwich, to be honest. Very well liked, very talented coach, but wow, okay, that's an opportunity almost too good to turn down, which it was and is. And I think there'll be a lot of people at Norwich who are watching that very closely to see how he gets on, partly because they really like him, and he was such a popular guy at Colney, players and staff, as was Paul Clements, and very good coach. But equally, I think there's a real sense of intrigue about how that appointment goes, because it's a massive job. And you look at some of the guys that have had it, really cultured, usually successful championship managers that have really struggled to grasp that. But equally, he is, and I know I've interviewed him, I've spoken to him a few times, he is an absolute obsessive of the game. Early hours looking at drills from 10 years ago that could be relevant to his team. So how that translates as a coach, we'll see. But I really hope he does well, because he's a good guy, and as you say, really good opportunity. I think if anyone can get that going at Stoke, there's a real, there'll be a real opportunity for them there quite quickly. So it's going to be interesting this weekend, because Norwich are walking into a game against somebody who knows everything about them. So this is a really big challenge, and if they can get through this game, as I said, I think there's real cause again. Every game they can get through and survive and perform in, is more evidence that actually something special could be building.
Absolutely. And I think we've got, is there another international break on the horizon? So that might be a
one
time.
more. Yeah, one more before Christmas.
Oh, before Christmas, is it? Okay, well, maybe we should catch up and see how Norwich are getting on then. But all things looking good at the moment. Connor, thank you so much as always. I'm sure everyone tuning in is very much locked into the Pinkun. But if you're not, then head over there. Some brilliant content coming out this season, and I'm sure there will be for the rest of this campaign. Thanks very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all again very soon.